Okay, once upon a time, there was a fox, and he was really hungry. He had a sack, but there was nothing in it. Then, just then, a bee flew by. It went... So he took his sack, and he grabbed up that bee. And then he said, "It's not very much, but soon what's in my sack will make a very nice snack." And then he walked off down the road, and as he walked off down the road, he sang a little song, and it went a little something like this. Nobody knows but me. Nobody knows but me. Nobody knows what's in my sack. Nobody knows but me. And he came along to the house, to the first house he came to, and he knocked on the door. And a tiny little woman answered the door, and she said, "Ah! Fox!" Because she was afraid of the fox. And he said, "Hello! I'm going to the house of my friend Squintum, and I need you to watch this sack for me until I get back." And she said, "Okay." And he said, "Don't look in it." She said, "What's in it?" He said, "Don't look in it." She says, "Okay, I won't look in your sack." And he set the sack down by the door, and as he walked off down the road, he sang a little song, and it went a little something like this. Nobody knows but me. Nobody knows but me. Nobody knows what's in my sack. Nobody knows but me. Well, she heard him singing that song, and she got real curious. She looked at that sack sitting there on the floor, and she wondered what was in it. And she said, "I wonder what's in that sack. I wonder what's in that sack. I wonder, I wonder, I wonder, I wonder, I wonder what's in that sack." Then she said, "I don't think the fox will notice if I look in his sack." And she opened it up, and the bee flew out. And he flew around the room. And she said, "Oh no, if the fox finds out that I've let the bee out of his sack, he's going to be so upset." So she grabbed the sack, and she started to chase him around and around the room, trying to get the bee back in the sack. And then she's trying to get the bee back in the sack, and it flew right out the window. And it flew out in the yard. And out in the yard, there was a chicken. He went, and the bee went, and the burp. The chicken ate the bee, and she said, "Oh no, my hen ate the bee. Fox is going to be so upset. Well, maybe he won't notice that his sack's been open." And so she set the sack back down by the door where it was. And after a while, there was a knock on the door. And she said, hello, Fox. There's your sack. See you later. Have a nice day. Bye-bye." And the first thing he did was the thing that she didn't want him to do. He opened up the sack. And he said, "Hey, I had a bee in here. Did you look in my sack?" And she said, "Yeah, I looked in your sack." He said, "I told you not to look in it." She says, "I know, but you were singing that song, and I was getting real curious, and I wanted to know what was in the sack. So I opened it up, and the bee flew out, and it flew out the window, and it went out of the yard, and my chicken ate your bee." "Oh ho," he says, "your chicken ate my bee?" And he grabbed the chicken and threw her in the sack. And she says, "Hey, that's not fair." And he said, "What's fair is fair, and what's not is not. What's in my sack goes in my pot." And he walked off down the road. And he came to the second house. There, bee. He walked off down the road. And when he got to the front door, he got to the door of the next house. He knocked on the door. And a tall, skinny woman answered the door. She said, "Ah, it's you, Fox." Because she was afraid of the fox, too. And he said, "Hello. I'm going to the house of my friend Squintum, and I want you to watch my sack for me till I get back." And she said, "All right." And he said, "Don't look in my sack." She said, "What's in it?" He said, "Don't look in it." "Okay, I won't look in your old sack. Just set it there by the door." And so he did. And then he walked off down the road, and as he walked off down the road, he sang a little song, and it went a little something like this. Nobody knows but me. Nobody knows but me. Nobody knows what's in my sack. Nobody knows but me. Well, she saw that sack sitting there, and she saw a fox going off down the road singing that song, and she got real curious. She wondered what was in that sack. Who wouldn't, right? And she said, I wonder what's in that sack. I wonder what's in that sack. I wonder, I wonder, I wonder, I wonder, I wonder what's in that sack. Yeah. And so she opened up the sack. And guess what happened? The chicken jumped out. Yeah, and he ran around the room going, and she tried to catch him. She ran around chasing him with the sack, and he ran out in the yard. And out in the yard, guess what there was? A pig. And he went, and the chicken went, and the pig went, and they went, and the pig chased the chicken out of the house, out of the yard, and it ran off down the street, all the way back to its own house. And she said, oh no, maybe when Fox gets back, he won't look in the sack. So she set it down by the door. And after a while, there was a knock on the door. And it was the fox. And what's the first thing he did? He looked in the sack, yeah, and there wasn't, and he says, hey, I had a chicken in here. Did you look in my sack? She said, yeah, I looked in your sack. And he says, I told you not to look in it. She says, I know, but, you were singing that song, and I was getting real curious, and I wanted to know what was in it, so I opened it up, and the chicken jumped out, and my pig chased your chicken off. And he says, oh ho! So your pig chased my chicken off? Well, then I'm going to take your pig. And he threw the pig in the sack, and she said, hey, that's not fair. And he said, what's fair is fair, and what's not is not. What's in my sack goes in my pot. And he walked off down the road. And he came to the third house, and he knocked on the door. And she opened up the door, and she said, ah, it's you, Fox. Because she was afraid of the fox. And he says, hello, I'm going to the house with my friend Squintum, and I want you to watch my sack for me until I get back. She said, what's in it? And he said, don't look in it. He said, okay, all right, I won't look in your sack. Just set it there by the door. And so he did. And he walked off down the road. And as he walked off down the road, he sang a little song. Went a little something like this. Nobody knows but me. Nobody knows but me. Nobody knows what's in my sack. Nobody knows but me. You're going to be hearing that all night long. And she just shook her head. She didn't want to look in. She was curious, but she didn't look in Fox's sack. No, she didn't. She went into the kitchen and went back to work. She had a lot to do, housewife and all. She's got a lot to take care of. And after a while, a little boy came into the house. And he said, hey, Mom, what's in this sack? She said, don't look in it. What's in it? Don't look in it. He said, well, is it a present for me? She said, don't look in it. And he looked at that sack, and he got real curious. And he said, I wonder what's in that sack. I wonder what's in that sack. I wonder, I wonder, I wonder, I wonder, I wonder what's in that sack. So guess what he did? He opened the sack, and out came the pig. And he ran around the room, and he says, oh no, if Mom finds a pig running around the living room, I'm going to be in real trouble. So he grabbed a stick from the fireplace, and he chased the pig out of the house, and the pig ran, and he ran out in the yard, and he ran down the street back to his own house. And after a while, there was a knock on the door. And it was the fox. And she said, there's your old sack, Fox, get out of here. And he picked up the sack, and the first thing he did was he opened it up. He said, hey, I had a pig in here. Did you look in my sack? She said, no, I didn't look in your old sack. He said, yeah, but I had a pig in here. What happened to it? She said, I don't know. And she looked at her little boy. She said, did you look in that sack? And he said, yeah, I looked in the sack. She said, I told you not to look in it. He says, I know, but I thought it might be a present for me, so I wanted to look in the sack. So I opened it up, and the pig jumped out. And I know you don't want a pig in the living room, so I chased it out. And the fox said, oh ho, your little boy chased my pig away? He said, hey, and he threw the little boy in the sack. And she said, that's not fair. And he said, what's fair is fair, and what's not is not. And what's in my sack goes in my pot. And he threw the sack over his shoulder, and he walked off down the road. And he came to the fourth house. Big stout woman answered the door. She said, oh, it's you, Fox. What do you want? He said, hello, I'm going to the house of my friend Squintum, and I need you to watch my sack for me till I get back. She says, all right. but I won't watch it for very long. Set it down over there. So he set the sack down, and he walked off down the road. And as he walked off down the road, he sang a little song, and it went a little something like this. Nobody knows but me. Nobody knows but me. Nobody knows what's in my sack. Nobody knows but me. Well, she just shook her head, that crazy old fox. She went back to work. She went into the kitchen where her daughters were. She had 2 daughters, and they were sitting at the table, and you know what they were making? They were making gingerbread cookies. They had one of those big yellow Tupperware bowls, you know, filled up with all the dough, and they're making gingerbread cookies, and they got an oiled sheet, and the oven's starting to get warm, so they're making the cookies, they're rolling dough, putting it on the sheet. They go and they put the sheet in the oven, and after a while, it starts to smell like gingerbread cookies all throughout the whole house. Oh, it's so delicious. And one of the first girls says, Mom, I can't wait. I want a cookie now. And the second girl says, yeah, me too. And from out in the living room, they hear, yeah, me too. And the mother said, hey, who said that? And she said, the first girl said, I said that. And the second girl said, yeah, I said that too. And out in the living room, she heard, me too. So she said, what's that fox up to? And she went out in the living room, she opened up the sack, the little boy was there. He said, hello. And she said, what are you doing in that sack? He says, I don't know. Fox put me in here. She says, well, how would you like to go into my bedroom and hide under the bed? And he said, that sounds like a plan. I love hiding under the bed. I'll do that. So he ran off into the bedroom and he hid under the bed. And she called her dog. She said, Buster, get in here. And in came her old hound dog. Roof, roof, roof. It was Buster. She said, Buster, we're going to play a trick on that old fox. You get in that sack. And so Buster got in the sack, and they closed up the sack nice and tight, and they went back to making their cookies, and after a while there was a knock on the door. And it was the fox. And she says, oh, it's you, Fox. There's your old sack. Take it and get out of here. And he went and he picked up the sack. Well, it didn't feel empty, so he must be all right. So he says, okay, I'll see you later. And he throws the sack over his shoulder, and he walks off down the road. And as he walks off down the road, he sings a little song, and it goes a little something like this. Nobody knows but me. Nobody knows but me. Nobody knows what's in my sack. Nobody knows but me. Well, as Fox wandered off down the road, he was getting hungrier and hungrier. And he's thinking, I don't really want to wait till I get home to make what's in this sack. I think I'm going to eat that little boy right here. So he dropped his sack on the side of the road, and he opened it up, and there was the dog, Buster. And he said, woof! And Fox said, what are you doing in there? And Buster said, ruff! And he jumped out at the fox, and he started chasing him down the road. He went... And Foxy jumped into his den, and just as he jumped into his den, Buster grabbed him by the tail, and he tore his tail right off. Ow, it hurt! But the den was so small that Buster couldn't get in and chase the fox, and the fox sat down there in his den, and oh man, that really hurts. And Buster, he ran home as quick as he could. And when he got home, the mother was there waiting for him, and so were the 2 little girls, and the little boy had come out of the bedroom, and they said, let's have some gingerbread cookies. And so the mother, she had one, and she gave one to her first daughter, and one to her second daughter, and one to the little boy, and she gave 2 to Buster. And meanwhile, Fox was off in his den. He was in a great deal of pain, having lost his tail. And he said, everybody knew but me. Everybody knew but me. Everybody knew what was in my sack. Everybody knew but me. The end. Thank you, folks.